Well, a week from today is Pinstripe Pride, and where all the Yankee, Hall of Famers and all the legends are going to be an American Dream. But I've got a man who not only knows them by heart, but has been part of the legendary franchise known as the New York Yankees, Mr. Tony Morante. Tony, thanks for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my honor.
All right, you might have seen Tony on Yankeeography, different Yes Network things as well, because he's the man behind the whole Monument Park tours, and now he's evolved to bringing the love of baseball to the classroom. We'll get to that in a bit. But Tony, talk to me a little bit. Tell me how you became the tour guide for Yankee Stadium, and then how that whole thing started. Because the Monument Park tours are going today too.
Wow. Well, it was a fun thing. Uh, I was a member of the Bronx County Historical Society back in 1972, 73, like that. And the one of the main people in that society and I became friends. So from time to time, he would come to the Yankee Stadium for lunch, and I would take him around. At that time, we had carte blanche. I took all over the place, on the roof, in the basement, everything. So, I got to know him really well. And by 1979, he said, "Hey, Tony, you think you could do a tour for us for of Yankee Stadium?" But what do you mean? I say, well, everything that you've showed me, people would enjoy seeing. So, yeah, okay, no problem. So they hooked it up for Veterans Day on the uh, 1979. And I never spoke in front of people before, and I was uptight as I kept on getting messages that the tour was growing by leaps and bounds and everything. And I'm praying for rain, snow, sleet, hail. I didn't want to do this tour, but I couldn't run, I couldn't hide, and I had to do the tour. You know what? I lived. I, there was life after the tour. I had 125 people from the borough president's office, and that was actually the first formal tour of Yankee Stadium.
Now, Tony,
And
you actually were the only one doing the tours. You didn't have any coworkers or helpers at the time.
right,
So I'm sure the man responsible for even that starting is the man who brought you on board, Mr. George Steinbrenner. And it's actually, I can't believe I'm saying it's 15 years since he passed away this year. It's 25 since I was, welcomed in by the Steinbrenner family. But here you are, a living legend that I like to say got the goodness of George because he brought you into the family almost right as he brought the team. Am I right?
absolutely, because when he came in, actually, it was January 3rd of 1973. He opened up a group and season sales department. Now, up until that point, all season or combination plans or things, they didn't have many combination plans. It was either season ticket holder or the public. And he opened up this group and season sales department, and I got in on the ground floor at that point. So by the time the first tour evolved in 79, as I mentioned, um, I had been in there for 5 years, 6 years already, and it was uh, something that I enjoyed doing, but I wanted to get a little more revenue. So I started doing tours for VIPs for about 5 years. And then I brought in the schools. And once we started with the schools making visitations to Yankee Stadium, it developed. And as time was going by, a lot of my time was being spent on my department that I was getting paid for, group and season sales, and I was not getting any money for doing the tours. And I thought this would be an adjunct to the group and season sales
You want to
department.
do so much more. That's what that was about. And look at what you created. You created basically the tour template that I think is still in place. And we'll get to that in a minute. The Yankee Museum, which has now been fully functional in the new stadium. But your love of the Yankees obviously made you want to do these tours. So talk about the history. I hear you were a season ticket holder. Am I correct in that?
Yes, from we were out in Shea Stadium in 74 and 75. And so I was in group and season sales up until that point, and I decided I didn't have enough of the New York Yankees during the day. I got one of my partners from the season sales department to go half with me on full season tickets. So after 5:30, I was able to motivate from my office to the stadium club or whatever venue there was for the season, because I sold some of those people that were in the club
Wow.
their season tickets. So I had a nice, a nice camaraderie with those folks.
You know, we talk about Monument Park, and I'm sure one of the stories you told on the tours was about Bobby Mercer climbing through those monuments. So tell us how it went from being on the field in center field to fenced in the new stadium. Were you part of that reconstruction at all?
Well, I didn't play much of a part. It was the it was Joe Byrne, who happened to be a Bronx boy, who was in charge of the reconstruction. We had demolition, and there were other construction groups that I got to know that participated in the tearing down of the old stadium and building a new one.
Hmm.
So it was an honor for me when they were moving the monuments. I got a call. They said, "Tony, we want you out here with the monuments. We want you to be here when we open up Babe Ruth, and you could.
Wow.
We want you to unveil him as this is the start of a new era."
New
And
era.
what an honor that was, really.
All right. So tell us about your Yankee knowledge and why you felt confident that you could be the one delivering the tours. Like, what was it about the Yankee history that you wanted to tell and share?
Okay. Well, I started coming to the stadium in '79. My dad was an usher at the time, and then the ushers were allowed to take uh, one or two of their kids to the game, and they could wait outside while the ushers were being assigned. It was done on a seniority basis. So, in all likelihood, my father was going to work while I was going to watch the game. But while they were getting assigned, I was out in right field, okay, in the box seats out in right field during batting practice. So people cherish a baseball, going to a game and get a baseball. I would come home with two or three baseballs a game. I was, I was like the most popular kid in the neighborhood, just giving these baseballs out. But that started me. And for about 10 years, I was doing that until my dad came up to me. And he said, "Hey, pal, you coming up on the arm long enough, you're going to have to start earning it." "What do you mean?" "Yeah, you want to come to the game? You got to work for it, pal." "What do you mean work?" He said, "Yeah, this is an usher's mitt. You're going to start ushering now." "I don't want, you want to watch the game? This is the deal." So um, I became an usher in '58. So I had 16 years by the time we hooked up with Mr. Steinbrenner in '73.
And look at the people you got to watch as an usher. I mean, the '50s, Yogi, Rizzuto, all of them, right? I mean, my goodness.
They were involved in 8 championships that decade. And yeah, the names that you mentioned, they're all icons in
And you get to
baseball.
know them. How cool is that? That you were only not just an usher, but then you get to know all of these legends as well.
Well, yeah, I did, and that was a part of my growing up that really resonated with me. That just gave me more impetus to learn more about our history. And nobody has more history in sports than the New York Yankees.
You know, another thing about uh, the Yankee lore and our connection to Mr. Steinbrenner is that I do want to go there for a minute because maybe make people notice on Yes Network you have one arm. I have one hand, I should say. I have one leg. I feel like the Yankees have been so inclusive to people with disabilities, and I feel like we're examples of that. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They never had any compunction about bringing me forward, sending me, introducing me to a lot of the high-end people that came to Yankee Stadium, especially in 2008 when the stadium was going down. I would get calls to come out, and a lot of I could throw a lot of good names at you, but one that really, really sticks out in my mind was actually 1990. And that was, I got a call from the media department. "Tony, could you come out here? We got some special people we want to take around Monument Park." "Sure." So I come out there, and who was standing there but Nelson Mandela?
Wow. Wow.
He just got out of the stir, which he was in for 27 years. I'm walking him around Monument Park, and this guy's got nothing but a smile on his face. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how impactful this thing is to me that I'm taking this guy who's been away from life virtually 27 years.
Mm.
And here he is just enjoying this whole moment. And then New York City had a big presentation down in the financial center the next day, and I was invited to go down there and tell them of my experience with Nelson Mandela. That's one that I'll never forget. I could throw a lot of names at you. You
Well, I
probably
was going to ask you any other dignitaries because obviously President Bush threw out that emotional first pitch in 2001. So let's go about the presidents. I've seen President Clinton in the suite at Yankee Stadium. I've seen VP Cheney. I've seen President Bush throw the first. Were all these dignitaries with you doing the tour before these games?
Well, I had that. That was an honor. It was an honor. They were artists, television stars. We don't need the names. But they were big timers, and uh, to me, for them to have me out there representing the New York Yankees in Yankee Stadium, which is the icon.
Sure.
I know I get all about Madison Square Garden being the big most popular arena, but we're the most popular outdoor arena. So it's not we don't want to take anything away from Madison Square Garden, but we are the outdoor arena as good as it gets. This is the epitome of outdoor sports.
Now, as your job with the tours, was it also to maintain the monuments, make sure they were crisp and clean for visitors? I mean, did you maintain them as well as do the
No,
tours?
the ground that was on the grounds crew. They did a wonderful job. They made sure those monuments were uh, being able to be represented to the public on any given day at any moment. So they were always on top of it.
I want to ask you this because obviously you actually went from the old stadium to the new stadium. And so when they transported the monuments, how did that work?
Well, uh,
Was it complicated because there were so many out there? I didn't know the process of moving them from the stadium to the new stadium.
well, they what it was. So I don't know if you recall, but there was we called it Death Valley out in left center field, and it was 457 feet away from home plate. So balls that were hit out there, especially by right-handers who, uh, through their careers, really had to struggle, including Joe DiMaggio,
Hmm.
big right-handed pull hitter, right? He wasn't shooting that ball to the porch in right field. No, he was going where his swing took him. And a lot
Sure.
of the times they were out in Death Valley, and that's where bulls died out there, so to speak. So when they moved it in, between 70, pardon me, not 73 and 74, from 2008 to 2009, is this where we are right now?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so we had also taken the monuments from the outfield and brought them into um, uh, their present site. Okay,
That's right. Yes.
all
Yep.
right. So we had the numbers on the ledge in the front between the fence and the stands and the bleachers, and they had the plaques on the back wall, and the monuments were front and center. And then we added two monuments after that. So um, when you gain monumental status, that's big time. It's as good as it gets, really.
We're talking about how you're passing the game along to the next generations through your program. But I want to ask a couple of more things. First of all, you're a New York State Hall of Famer, Baseball Hall of Famer. What does that mean to you, Tony Morante?
What an honor, to get tapped to be representing New York in a Hall of Fame, which is exclusively for New York sports figures. Uh, I I still, I still can't wrap my head around it. But uh, they said your longevity and what you contributed to this, so they tapped on me, and oh my God, what a thrill that was up in
And then you're Italian American, and now the IABF is in the Hall of Fame as well. They just got inducted this past year. That must have been really special to see.
absolutely. I'm a member of the Italian American Baseball Foundation, along with Dom Scala and a few of the Yankees. The last one I was hanging out with Dave Righetti, who
Sure.
was one of our great pitchers going back in the early '80s, and Uh, I also met Bob Manfred at that time, and we talked about the future of the game, and I'm talking a little about globalization of baseball, and that's where it lies right now because we're actually struggling with the other sports. We are not that top rung. Okay, I keep using term we. The New York Yankees are not the top rung as far as fandom is concerned.
And remember, they were known. I mean, when Matsui came over, they were so popular in Japan. They have, I mean, the New York insignia though is still prolific all around the world, isn't it?
Absolutely, there's no insignia that's more popular. You could go to any airport. I'll guarantee that you're going to find an NY logo with the white NY logo with the blue background with the blue hat. And you mentioned Matsui. I got to know Matsui because what happened was back in 1882, there was a professor by the name of Wilson who was teaching in Japan in Tokyo University. And what he did, he brought the game of baseball. Now, this was the New York game. A lot of baseball evolved around the New York game, which basically started when people ask me the birth of the game and all that stuff. It's hard to pin. But in 1845, when the New York Knickerbockers gave 20 new rules, that became known as the New York game. So Professor Wilson takes the New York game to Japan. Japan falls in love with the game, and now that's their national pastime. So what happened was in 2003, we get Hideki Matsui comes over, and they wanted me to talk to the Japanese press and everything, which I did. And it was obviously it was an honor for me to represent the Yankees once again in this setting. So uh, I got to know Hideki through what happened was a lot more Japanese media were coming around, and they were asking for me. And I'll never forget this one time, Alex, that uh, I was standing on the ledge, and the retired numbers are in front of me. Okay, you got the picture, left center field. And after I finished my spiel about the numbers and things that were going on with the monuments and the plaques and stuff like that, they were lining up to take a picture with me. So I asked the interpreter, I said, could you tell me what's going on here? Why are they all lining up for me? I don't know these folks. He said, you're a big star in Japan. They know you. Because what was happening, they took some of the tours that I had been doing, even though Hideki hadn't been with us at that point, and they wanted to bring that back to Japan. So, being that it's their national pastime, also it was very popular thing to do.
You know,
Um,
as a tour guide, by the way, you mentioned the popularity of the tours. As a tour guide, though, I'm thinking of you probably were on that Yankeeography with Matsui with all these guys. The knowledge you have to have for all these different monuments and these players. How did you compartmentalize that as a tour guide, and how were you able to recall it so quickly? Like, what was your process before every tour?
well, there are two things that are going on in your brain. There's stuff that goes into the immediate part of the brain, which you could task for up to the moment type of stuff. And there's stuff that you need to be a little more judicial with. But when you get that judicial stuff repeated over and over and over again, it comes into that first part of the brain, which is right there anytime you need it. So that's what happened. I could, the perpetuation of the history just came implanted in my brain, and that's why it's part of what I'm about. And
You know, these tours now are not just Monument Park; they go on different places. Where were you able to take them when you first started all of this?
well, I had carte blanche to take them all over, but I wanted to condense it into 1 hour. So I would meet them at the press gate, either go up to the press box, down Monument Park, on the field, into the dugout, and if clubhouse was available at that time, into the clubhouse. And that was really popular because at that point, when I started doing the tours in the clubhouse, I took them people back to Thurman Munson's locker.
Yes. Yep.
which used to be Roger Maris's locker. And when I got the Maris family had come to me for a special tour, which I did. And you should have seen the emotion. It was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. But that was a major part of the tour at that time. Then, as
And
the
you wait, hold on, you got to know Thurman. I mean, tell us about your relationship or friendship with Thurman Munson.
I had a good relationship with Thurman, but he was all about the game and winning. And I remember one particular time that we were trying to advance the sale of tickets because I was still in the group and season sales department. I was doing the tours as an adjunct, right? Thinking that that front
Sure.
revenue was going back into group and season sales, which it wasn't. It was going into the Yankee Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit part of the organization, which regurgitated the money into the city coffers for education and recreation programs for the kids. So when I had where was I going with this, Alex?
Well, you basically, when you were starting the sales, I'm sure you had Thurman involved to try and sell tickets. Is that right?
Oh, Thurman, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, so we would if a community bought 1,000 tickets from me, we would give them some perks. Like I would take them up to or take their leader up to Phil Rizzuto, Frank Mesa, Bill White in the upstairs in the press box, introduce him, get him on the air like that. We had 4 seats that were designated right behind the dugout. We gave them complimentary seats on top of that. And one of the things that we did, we offered them an opportunity to present a plaque to a player of their choice. And I'll never forget, there was this one time, I think it was a July 4th doubleheader in 74, that we had the Boston Red Sox. Okay. Now, it wasn't the Boston Red Sox rivalry that we know of today, because it wasn't until later on in '86 when Red Shaughnessy had started calling the Yankees, and you know, all. So what happened was they chose Thurman Munson as the recipient of this honor that we had bestowed, because they actually bought 1,600 tickets, which was 600 more than they had to buy. But
Wow.
the
Wow.
the main guy was Aaron Silver from PepsiCo, who said that he wanted to acknowledge Thurman Munson. So the first part of the doubleheader was Bill Lee against Catfish Hunter. Now, I told you about Thurman winning to the nth degree. He did not like to lose, especially to the Red Sox. And the fact that Cat was pitching, my God. So after the first game, I had to go down and get Thurman to bring him out onto the field. And uh, I go down into the club. Now the Yankees lose 1-0. It was a tie score, 0-0 into the ninth inning. The Sox pushed across 1 run, and that was it. We couldn't respond to that. And the game was over. So I'm going into the clubhouse now looking for Thurman, and he's not by his locker. I said, where's Thurman? Where's Thurman? Oh, he's I'll call it the restroom, okay? He's in the restroom. So I go back into the bathroom and hey, Thurman. Yeah, it's Tony Morante. What do you want? We could, but we have to make a presentation to Aaron Silva, your buddy. I ain't going. What do you mean you're going? I told him he didn't want we lost the game. He didn't want any part of anything happening at that point. So he was hiding from everything, whatever his business was at that point. But we had a great relationship. Thurman he was the heart and soul of the team. He left it all out on the field and then some. As a matter of fact, there's a dinner that's coming up in March. I would mention a Thurman Munson dinner.
And I hope to see you there because I'm planning on going to that. So that should be really special.
Yeah, maybe I'll see you there. I'm planning on around that myself.
Tony, I gotta say there are a few people continuing the legacy of Mr. Steinbrenner, and someone who's very close to Therm, Ray Negron, is someone that I consider a mentor, a brother, a friend, and I know we know him well. You, Ray, Jenny, and Haley and the Steinbrenner family all continue their dad's legacy, as well as Rob Gomez. So I want to give a shout out to all of them while we have this moment, because I know you know every one of them like I do, and it's been a special run with the Steinbrenner family.
Good job, Alex. Good job. That they deserve that recognition.
Well,
Absolutely.
they do, because the media won't give it, so we got to give it here. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I hear you. And they're so humble. I'll never forget the humility that is in the Steinbrenner family. Uh, in the Yankee Museum, we had a section that was laid up for Mr. Steinbrenner, a tribute to Mr. Steinbrenner. So that was part of the tour at the time, and I took people into Monument Park, into the museum. I must have had about 10 to 12 people on the tour at that point. And I'm in front of Mr. Steinbrenner's um,
Mm-hmm.
scene there. And um, I'm looking at it, I said, and here's something very special here, ladies and gentlemen. A famous quote from Mr. Steinbrenner. If you do a good deed for someone and more than two people know about it, you and the person you're doing the good deed for, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. Those are the exact words of this famous quote. Ginny was there, and they didn't want any accolades or anything, and she was not appreciative of me bringing this positive thing. And she mentioned it after the tour was over, but I had to mention it because people didn't know about George because he did everything they call sub rosa under the table.
And thank you for sharing that quote, because I've heard that on many occasions. So I'm glad you reinstate that for people who may not know that quote.
Never forget it. Never forget it.
And look at all the good he's done, not only in New York, but in Tampa with the families of first responders. I mean, it's just amazing. They even named a school after him down in Tampa, I believe. But I want
It's
to go back to the popularity of the tours also, because, all right, so you get this going, right? And then all of a sudden it gets really busy. Did you start hiring people to help you with the tours, or how did you manage all that?
yes. So here's what happened. Back in 1998, the tours were really growing at that time. The
Because they were winning.
popularity. Well, not only that, that was one of the major reasons, obviously, but moreover than that, we started doing them to the public. Up until that point, it was actually 1990 that we started opening it up to the public. Up until that point, it was basically for the schools. We were charging $2 for a child and $4 for a teacher for a full tour of Yankee Stadium at the time when we opened it up, actually in 1985. So by 1990, its popularity had grown so much, said, we got to open up the tours to the public. We just have to do this. And it went on deaf ears, deaf ears, deaf ears until Mr. Steinbrenner got it in 1998. I get a call up to his office. I said, Tony, you were up here before with this memo, and yeah, I know, Mr. Steinbrenner. I just wanted to, hoping that you would read it. And he says, well, I know one thing, that the tours are going to work. You're the man. You don't have to report to anybody. Just let me know what you're doing. Okay? You have a new department now you're going to be working in exclusively. Oh my God. How big was that? So had it up from group and season sales, and it went to the I opened up the tour department, and the tours started to grow. Hired more people, jobs, security people were hired, more security. So it was an important part. And as I believe I mentioned before, that the tours were nonprofit, and it was basically a 501c3, not for profit, and that money that was spent in that direction went to the city coffers for education and recreation programs for the youth, which was a good thing. So here we are, we're doing a service, a good public service, and we're even helping them financially. So it was a good it was a good family, really.
You know, I gotta say, you are truly a Yankee historian. What does it mean to be called that, a historian of the game? Because here you are in this next chapter after your Yankees career. You're bringing this history of not only Yankees but baseball to the class, to like these programs you do. Tell us about the programs and your website. if I get it correctly here. I don't want to bungle it for you. It is US baseball, UShistorybaseball.com. Am I right?
Right. No, baseball, the New York game,
Baseball in New York. Well, tell us about that.
how the national passed out. Okay, here we go. You get this whole thing,
I
Alex?
got it. Yes, sir. Yes.
That's the deal. That's the deal. Now, what happened was back in 2014, as I mentioned to you, I was doing tours for the schools and getting to know the teachers. So we were opening up an education program to try to have the kids understand a little bit more about what our approach was. And one of the things that was very important was talking about leadership. So I got Derek Jeter, Mark Teixeira to help me with public service announcements, to put on a slideshow, bringing out all this stuff. So what happened by 2014? The popularity was actually really growing well at that time. But I saw the National Assessment for Educational Progress report card in 2014, and it stated that only 18% of our eighth grade students were proficient in social studies, and that was alarming. So I got permission to open up an idea that I thought would be something that would help these youngsters, and that was basically to present a program that would bring American history and baseball into the same folder. Okay, so there was a symbiotic relationship, because if we go back to the period of General George Washington during the Revolutionary War, for example, there was a time where he wanted to advocate more leisure and exercise for his troops between the battles and the boredom of the time between the battles. So he wanted this exercise to be going on. So he advocated uh, uh, leisure and exercise and games of ball.
And if I'm not mistaken, the ball that they had was so big. It was a lot bigger than the regular baseball, right? So it really started not just in that regular MLB ball we see. It was a big baseball back in the day.
Well, they didn't have, they started fine tuning it, because what that was part of the early part of the game. And baseball wasn't actually baseball, it was basically folk games. And into the 19th century, when the market revolution came about, and the our country started to leave the green fields of the pastures and bring them in, and that's when urbanization came around, and that was an ideal time for baseball places to play their games. And being that it evolved on the game evolved on the Lower East Side of New York, and basically around Broadway and 8th Street, and it started to move up. And as the developers were coming, they were taking up that prime land. So they were moving the game up further until they got up to um, 4th Avenue and 26th Street. And this was the Knickerbockers in 1845, and they said, "We're not running anymore. We got to get out of here." So they moved over to Elysian Field in Hoboken, New Jersey, as their home place to play the game.
Does it, by the way, does this, because I know New Jersey's home to, in Patterson, they have that Hinchcliffe Stadium. Does this history also cover the Negro League? It's like, really, isn't the evolution from the 1880s upward?
No, the Negro League didn't start until 1920 by Rube Foster. That and it wasn't the New York Yankees, but what Yankees participation in the Negro push at that time was that Jacob Rupert
Yeah.
saw that the Negroes were coming on strong, so he rented the stadium out to the Black Yankees from 36 to 47. They were part of Yankee Stadium because uh, he was a businessman, and Rupert didn't want to turn down an opportunity for more revenue, because we're going through the depression at this time. The game, the popularity had ebbed. People didn't have the money to, but baseball was always there. And to expand on that, we had the Negroes, and the Negroes were very responsible for bringing night games in, because they used to have these portable nightstands when they were going around with their in the different parks in the middle of the country and everything, and playing games at night. So
Amazing.
then it was, I guess it was 1938 that we had the night game with the Cincinnati, and that was like the first big professional major league night game uh, played, and that was once again a forerunner of great ideas, Brent Trickey.
Yeah. Yeah. Brent, who signed Jackie Robinson, of course.
Yeah, he was the main man. He was pushing Jackie from about 1941, and it was going on deaf ears because the Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the commissioner at the time, was beholden to the owners. The owners didn't want to see any kind of integration at that point.
Mm,
So as time was going by, Ricky was always out there pushing, and then finally he had his scouts take a closer look at this guy Jackie Robinson. Kansas, he went to He went to Montreal. He was up in the minor leagues for Montreal. Then he came and opened up the black game in 1947, and
amazing.
he became so important not only to to baseball, but a lot of the corporations that had seen the success of the Yankees that was growing at that point in time, and they see that the Yankees crossed that line, and
Right.
that's what happened with corporations up at the top levels. They says, "Oh yeah, we have to promote the African American community also." He was the major man at that point. And
Absolutely.
I'll never forget the first guy who came in Yankee pinstripes, and that was a guy by the name of Elston Howard,
Yes, Ellie Elston Howard.
one of the nicest guys I ever met. I'll never forget that during lunchtime, and
Okay.
if the Yankees were home, then we were playing night games. I would go up 161st Street, have a bite to eat up there, and then I would come back and I would go through the field level box area from the loading dock by gate 2. And I'm walking along there and I'm looking, oh my God, that's got to be Elliot. So he's behind home plate in the box seats, just behind the fence. I woke up, Elliot, mind if I sit down? Oh no, sure. Every time I went to lunch, he never turned me down. He was always he was always a gentleman to me. I got to know Arlene and his family, and I was so happy to see him um, be successful. He was a good man, and
Yeah.
I think that the players even supported him when they were on the road. And there were some of the towns that weren't open to integration at that point. They said, you don't want him in, you're not getting us. That's it. And that's the way the his teammates supported. They loved him, and I saw him when he came back. If it was with Boston for a while, and he came back later on um, after the renovation of the stadium, and I had a chance to see him from time to time. Good man, good, really good.
No, yeah. Now remind me of the teammates he had around him at that point.
Well, we're talking about Yogi. The Scooter had moved on. Joe D wasn't around. We had Bob Turley. We had Charlie Silvera. Um, we had let's see, Mickey, Gene Woodling, Hank Bauer in the outfield, shortstop Gil McDougal, third base rather, shortstop. Um, who was by the shortstop? Good
Was
gracious,
Kubek around at the time? At that time?
Tony Kubek. Yep, thank you. How could I forget Kubek? He was such a part of the organization in that period, and uh, so you had a great team. Don't forget that during the 50 period, the Yankees went to the World Series 8 times.
8 times.
They
And I
didn't win
believe
them all.
Casey was managing at that time. Am I right?
Yeah, Casey was the main man, and in 1960, after the Yankees lost in '59, and he was let go, um, Ralph Houk took it over. And I'll
Right.
tell you a little bit about Ralph Houk. I have to say, as a former veteran myself, He was a major part of the Battle of the Bulge in Bastogne in World War II, and he did a lot to capture enemy machine gun nests.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's why they called him Major.
Well, we got to do another episode based on that too, because the wartime cut into players' careers, but also showed their devotion to country. I mean, there's no doubt you cut your playing time short to defend and serve. That's a big deal. You know, everybody makes a big deal out of Ted Williams, cut his career short because he served, but he did it because he loved the country. I mean, that was first and foremost for these guys.
Yeah,
Yogi, Phil Rouge, I mean, all these
Normandy.
guys
Yeah,
basically.
Normandy. Sure. Gene. I'm having a mental.
That's okay. I before we wrap up, because I'm gonna have you on another episode for sure. I want to continue this conversation. Tell us about the podcast part of your page, ushistorybaseball.com. What can we find when we listen to the podcast?
Well, how important the military was. Don't forget the Star Spangled Banner. A lot of the things that evolved around military history, and even the president in 1942, when Commissioner Landis sent him a letter saying, "What would you want us to do?" The game of baseball was ripe for being picked
Mm-hmm.
to go over and join the mission. And he said, no, the game has to go on. They called it the green light letter to let baseball continue because he wanted the people to have some enjoyment. So they
Right.
continued there. And, Jerry Coleman, the guy I was speaking about, had over 100 flights between World War II and the Korean War, a few more than from Ted Williams. Williams didn't have much combat, but Jerry Coleman did. And I got to know Jerry afterwards, and another great guy. So,
And
and
he also went to the broadcast booth after his playing days for San Diego for all those years. My goodness.
yes, yeah, you know what? And I was asked to do a program on that, and I was in touch with him, um, and then he passed away while I was in the middle of doing something. So I had a fondness for Jerry Coleman. He was a great second baseman, and the Scooter and Coleman, great combination, double play combination.
Well, as we get closer to the anniversary of Mr. Severance, Pat, I want to just delve into his connection to you more and what he provided, and gave you the tools to really make this tour work. And real quick, are the tours where you wanted to be today? Are you still following the progression of the Yankees? Because they are still doing them a lot. I mean, they have a lot of tours still. Do you follow that today or not as much?
Well, not quite as much. I'm in the process of doing a second book right now, and it's a workbook on the first book that I had written, and it's
And also, I understand the guy who moderates the museum now. Am I right, Brian?
Brian Richards. Yeah, he came with us in 2008, and uh, I thought being a member of the Historical Society, and at meetings that we had up in the boss's office, they asked what the departments needed. This is going back to 2005. And I kept on raising my hand that we needed a museum, and he kept on knocking it down until Brian Cashman and Sonny Height had said, no, we got to get a museum. So we put the plans in for a museum, and they saw what I was doing with the tours growing and everything, and they didn't want to take me from that to move me there or join that. So Brian Richards, who had been doing some internship in Cooperstown in the Natural Hall of Fame, and he came down and he's doing a great job. I mean, we were able to talk baseball ad infinitum about the game. His office was just a couple of doors down from mine, so we spent a lot of time together in those early years, and he's doing a wonderful job now.
One last thing before I let you go, Tony Morante, this has been an honor to have you on for this segment. But again, we're going to have you on as the year progresses. I mean, we're not even toward opening day. We got to stay in touch for baseball because I know you're going to want to react to that maybe on this show. So we'll definitely do that as the season progresses also. But one last thing. Did the tours change in the new stadium? I mean, obviously the dimensions changed because you weren't in center field anymore the way it was with the bullpens. You were sort of a more seclosed area where they put Monument Park. But did that change the tours at all in the new stadium? Or
Not really. I'm not too familiar with what they did in this past year. I haven't been. I've been working on what I have to do here,
sure.
and I just didn't have the time to kill a whole day or a good portion of the day. But the tours are basically what I had mentioned: Monument Park, the dugout, the field sometimes, and the press box. So I think they're very limited as far as seeing anything in the clubhouse now. If
And also, it's a
at
different
all.
era because I feel like the '90s and '80s, you could do whatever you wanted at the other stadium. Because let's face it, 9/11 changed everything too. I mean, that whole attack changed security. Back in the day, I'm sure you felt you could, you know, go anywhere with these people. But after 9/11, everything changed. Every security protocol changed. So I'm sure that was a change in the tours as well after 2001.
No, not really, Alex. Not really. The stadium was well represented as far as security was concerned. So my places weren't in hidden places where somebody might be doing some nefarious type of stuff because I'm out in Monument Park, I'm in the press box, I'm on the field, I'm in the dugout. These are all wide open areas. And we had a great security detail at the stadium at the time. And the only time that there was any question was when we went into the clubhouse. And that was rather limited. I didn't even know if they used the clubhouse anymore, Alex.
All right. Well, Tony Morante, so glad to have you on, and we'll do this again soon. And can I promote the website one more time? ushistorybaseball.com. Can people email you and reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yanktony@gmail.com.
Love it.
YANKTONY@gmail.com.
Love that name. All right. We'll get into more as the season rolls around and progresses, and as we get toward the 15th anniversary of the passing of Mr. Steinbrenner and my own 25th anniversary of meeting Mr. I mean, everything's happening this year. So thanks for kicking off the 25 years of being with the Yankee family for me on this podcast.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I know how you feel.
Amen. All right, Tony, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor.